Before they were called flight attendants, they were called stewardesses. They were the glamour of flying personified, the picture of jet age sophistication. These are the women of Pan Am. Pan American World Airways, Pan Am, last flew in 1991. For its former employees, the golden age of travel lives on. At reunions like this, held not long ago in Savannah, Georgia.
Stewardesses were highly thought of, and we had to have a bit of college, at least, in which I had. We were happy-go-lucky girls.
90-year-old Kathleen Cook Gray and her daughter Leslie Manning both flew for Pan Am.
I started in 1948. Dinosaur days. Out of San Francisco, I flew to Honolulu every time. It was like a second home. And then we'd go to Shanghai, we'd go to Manila, and we'd go to Sydney, Australia. Our trips were about 3 weeks. I lost all my boyfriends in San Francisco because I was gone too long.
Pan Am was the pioneer in aviation.
A Martin 130, the most advanced piece of commercial flying equipment in the world.
Pan Am was the first airline to have scheduled service across the Atlantic and Pacific. They were the first ones to have an actual airline terminal and have air traffic control and serve hot meals on board an aircraft.
Author and historian Becky Sprecher flew 6 years for the airline.
Part 4 is about the jets, or the glory days, as we all call them.
She says every flyer today owes a debt to one man, the founder of Pan Am.
Juan Trippe was a Navy man, so he decided to style the airline in a nautical fashion, the port and starboard and forward and aft and galleys and so forth. And he named the clippers for the clipper ships. And they were very romantic names, the Empress of the Skies and the West Wind, and these lovely names.
This is Pan American 707 Jet Clipper Service, Flight 116 to Paris.
Flying first class on a clipper was the experience of a lifetime.
People dressed up for it. It was an occasion. The journey was as important as the destination.
Their uniforms were designed by the likes of Adolfo and Edith Head.
This was my first uniform from 1966.
When you put this on, you're like a different person. You go back to being 20.
The journey came complete with a 5-star meal.
We could do just about everything except flambe something. Obviously, you can't have flames on an aircraft. We had a wonderful roast, and we got really good at cooking in convection ovens, and I could just lay a pair of tongs on it and know it was rare.
Things like the sweetbreads would have been prepared in Paris by Maxime's.
It's one of the top restaurants in the world, right?
Yes. The food was just exquisite. The entrees...
Mary O'Con kept the menus from some of those meals.
Lobster thermidor?
Oh, so good. From New York, where I was based, we flew through Europe and through the Middle East, Beirut, Tehran, and then all the way to Bangkok and Hong Kong.
Boarding your flight, you were greeted personally.
We'd get a seat assignment beforehand, and we had to memorize the names and call the passengers by their names.
Sometimes, those names weren't hard to remember.
Lana Turner was on one of my flights, and Lex Barker was with her, and they each had a berth booked, but one berth was never slept in.
Wow. So the Mile High Club existed.
Right.
Pan Am brought the Beatles to the United States, and it brought its employees into contact with worlds they never imagined.
A friend of mine and I ran into a movie crew going into Manila, and they said, would you all like to join us on the set? Well, of course, we'd never been on a movie set before, but this one was a Lulu. It was Apocalypse Now. And we flew up in Francis Coppola's plane and watched some of the filming and came back home. It was just kind of all in a day's work.
On January 21st, 1970, Pan Am introduced Boeing's 747 jumbo jet and ushered in a new era of air travel.
Rome is getting ready.
CBS News covered the event with stories from around the globe.
Paris is ready. Orly Airport is ready to load and unload not one, but God forbid 4 Boeing 747 jumbo jets at the same time.
But 1978 brought deregulation to the airline industry, which turned out to be a mixed blessing for both airlines and passengers. It was the beginning of the end for Pan American.
Many air travelers in this community are seeing the other side of the deregulation coin, the side that allows the major airlines to abandon service to economically marginal towns in order to cash in on the more lucrative routes.
But Pan Am faced a far greater threat.
Pan Am brand recognition globally was right up there with Coca-Cola. So when there were people that wanted to do America harm, they conflated Pan Am with the United States.
This is the CBS News special report, the tragedy of Pan Am 103.
The downing of Pan Am 103 killed 270 people. Leslie Manning felt the shock of Lockerbie personally.
When I saw that airplane and I saw the cockpit and I knew that I had flown on that plane several times, that was devastating.
Pan American never recovered. 3 years later, the airline shut down. But for its employees, those were the days.
It was the sorority that I didn't know I needed. It handpicked the most brilliant, interesting, educated, worldly women that I could even imagine, that I got to have as colleagues, and I loved it and I was comfortable.
We all still talk about our favorite restaurants in Tokyo to eat tonkatsu and where to go for dim sum in Hong Kong at 9 o'clock in the morning. All these different things that we did, it's a unifying language with Pan Am.